Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify my variable and where it's located. So in the first equation, I have 5x plus 2 equals 12, and obviously my variable's over here. So I'm going to box out everything that's over on this side. Okay, and we're going to make a flowchart looking picture. So I'm going to take my x and I'm going to draw an arrow like that. And I'm going to say to myself or my students, what is happening to x? What is happening to x in this expression or this part of the equation? And they're going to say, well, it's multiplied times 5. So I am going to rewrite that as 5x. And it should match up with the equation up here. The next thing that happens to 5x or x is I add 2. So I'm going to write that down, add 2. So now it should look exactly like it looks in the equation. We basically built that side of the equation. Okay, and now we are going to wrap this thing around, equals. Okay, and we're going to say 5x plus 2 equals 12. And I'm going to put 12 right here. And now we're going to start with 12 and we're going to work backwards. So based on what we have already written up here, we're going to wrap around, come down to 12, and then we're going to go back this way doing the opposite operations. So we built it. Now we're going to undo it. Okay, we're going to do the opposite. So it's not the opposite sign, it's the opposite operation. And kids get confused with that all the time. So we added 2 here. So the opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. So I'm going to do that. So I do 12 minus 2 is 10. And then I'm going to undo the last part, which is multiplying by 5. So the opposite of multiplying, oops, I did that a minute ago too. The opposite of multiplying by 5 is dividing by 5. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. So now I know that x equals 2. So I could write that over here. That's my final answer. And I've just made a really nice visual representation of building the equation and then undoing the equation to get to the answer. So hope that makes sense. So now we're going to do that with a little bit different type things. We have a fraction looking thing right here. Kids always get confused about what this is. Minus 10 equals 0. So the first thing I'm going to say is that fractions always mean divide. Okay, so that's divided by. And everybody knows there's a 1 sitting in front of the x. It's always good to know that. There's always a 1 even up here sitting in front of the x. You don't need to always write it unless you need to do something with it. Like if I wanted to break this fraction out in front of the x, I could pull it out in front. 1/6x is the same as x divided by 6. Same thing. We don't really need to do that here, but I just wanted to point that out. Okay, I'm going to box everything that's going on right here, and now we're going to start building this side of the equation. So we're going to always start with x. It's about what are the things that are done to x. So the first thing done to x is divide by 6. So I'm just going to write it just like it was. The second thing that was done to x was minus 10. So now I'm going to rewrite that. Kids don't always need to do this. Obviously, they can do a lot of this stuff in their head. If they can do it correctly, that is a different story. But for any kid that struggles, or maybe they just can't remember the process, doing several problems like this can be helpful, and especially when we get down to the next problem. So then we're going to say it equals 0 because it does, according to this. And now we're going to go backwards, and we're going to start with 0, and we're going to do the opposite operation. So the opposite of the minus 10, we're going to put down here, which is plus 10. So obviously 0 plus 10 is 10. And then again, I'm going to do the opposite of dividing by 6, which is multiplying times 6. And 10 times 6 is 60. And there we have our answer. So equals. So we just made a nice little rectangle with a lot of good stuff inside. I like this, and I like this for kids that I have to reteach, and